Dear students, propaganda has an important role to play in education dispensable to democracy. It is only through propaganda that the ideals of democracy can be made known to the public. In every individual democratic nation, democracy has a specific mode of operation. The public cannot play its part appropriately in it without being aware of this mode of operation. Hence, it is necessary that the mode of operation of democracy should be extensively propagated in the public. In a democracy, the administration is run by the representatives elected by the public itself. In these elections, there are contestants belonging to more than one political party, and all of these political parties propagate their views in the public. By this process, the public comes to know of the aims and objectives of the various contestants and is also enabled to decide as to which can be voted to in order to ensure the welfare of the nation. At this point, it would be as well to know that this view can also be false and delusive, and it is important to prevent deceptive propaganda as it is to ensure the propagation of true facts for the success of democracy. The importance of the scientific study of propaganda, both in the fields of sociology and psychology, is only too apparent from the above description of the need for propaganda in a democracy or any other human society. Hence, we will study propaganda from both standpoints, the sociological as well as the psychological. Once the psychological basis of the appeal has been understood, it is easy enough to grasp why propaganda has so much influence in society. What is propaganda? In the world of today, propaganda is an important element in the political, economic, and social spheres. What is the propaganda? It will have to be scientifically defined if it is to be understood. The word propaganda derives from the Latin propagare, which means to produce or to spread or to plant the branches in order to grow a new plant. In this way, propagare implies production or spreading which is artificial, not natural. Evidently, in its literal meaning, the word propaganda means the artificial propagation or spreading of something. For this reason, some individuals look upon propaganda as something harmful, although it has now been definitely established that propaganda is very essential for the education of the public. Definitions of propaganda. It would be useful to glance at some of the definitions of propaganda, as such a step would be of help in its understanding. Some of the major definitions are the following. Kimball-Young. According to Kimball-Young, for our purposes, we shall define propaganda as the more or less deliberately planned and systematic use of symbols, chiefly through suggestion and related psychological techniques, with a view first to altering and controlling opinions, ideas, and values, and ultimately to changing overt action along predetermined lines. The above definition of propaganda throws light upon the following important facts. Propaganda is generally well thought out and properly organized. Propaganda is not done openly and ostentatiously, but in symbolic form. For example, when a political party advises the public to vote into office, only that person who is the true representative of the public, it means to propagate the idea that only the candidate belonging to its party is the true representative of the people, while the other contestants are not. Propaganda is usually effected through suggestion. The objective of propaganda is to change or control public opinion. The ultimate or the final aim of propaganda is to convert the actions of the public along the desired line by controlling and molding the ideals and thoughts of the people. According to Doob, propaganda is a systematic attempt by interested individuals to control the attitudes of group of individuals through the use of suggestion and consequently to control their action. This definition points out that propagation of ideals takes place through the medium of suggestion. It is used to control the tendencies of the people, and propaganda is organized or systematic. In this way, stated briefly, propaganda is a psychological process in which suggestion is systematically employed to influence or to control the ideas, ideals, and tendencies of the people indirectly. Kinds of propaganda. The main kinds of propaganda are as follows: direct and indirect propaganda. From the foregoing definitions, it should not be supposed that propaganda is effected only indirectly. In actual fact, propaganda can be both direct and indirect. In direct propaganda, the people upon whom it is being used are cognizant of the individual who is doing it and the purpose why he is doing it. For example, the present Indian government is directly propagating the schemes of life insurance, family planning, small savings, etc. Besides its many major projects, the people are fully aware of the fact that this propaganda is governmental, and in it the government points out the benefits accruing to the public from these schemes and asks the people to adopt them. On the other hand, some propaganda can also be indirect, just as the propaganda against India generated by Pakistan is guided by their intention of taking possession of Kashmir. In indirect propaganda, people are not aware of the objective or purpose of it. For example, it is the practice adopted by many people who resort to propaganda never to reveal their intention, which motivates the propaganda. They change the views and ideals of the people in a subtle manner and succeed in forcing it to act in the manner they desire. In wartime, many leaders try to arouse the national sentiment and the patriotic fervor in their fellow countrymen, the intention behind such action being to persuade more and more men to enlist in the army. Other kinds of propaganda. Psychologists have classified propaganda further, such as primary and secondary propaganda. Primary propaganda consists in the instigation and excitation of attitudes and prejudice that already exist. To take a common example, the state of tension between the Hindus and Muslims continues from the past into the present. Taking advantage of this, the Azad Kashmir government always incites and tries to force the Muslim population of Kashmir to mutiny and revolt. This is an example of primary propaganda. In secondary propaganda, no tendency or mental set is present previously. In it, new tendencies and thoughts are instilled into the people. Some psychologists have also effected distinction between conscious and unconscious propaganda. Conscious propaganda, apparently enough, is done purposely and is pre-planned. Unconscious propaganda happens accidentally and is not effected knowingly. Psychological basis of the appeal of propaganda. Dear students, the earlier description of propaganda throws light upon its various psychological bases and the appeal which it has for the public. Roughly stated, in the background of propaganda are suggestions, motivations, tendencies, beliefs, emotions, and feelings. Propaganda is aimed at influencing these factors in the people. These are employed and these are transformed and controlled. If the psychological basis of propaganda are to be properly understood, the relation between these elements and propaganda must be delineated easily. Propaganda and suggestion. As been pointed out earlier, the main basis of propaganda is suggestion or direction. Through the medium of suggestion, all kinds of desirable changes can be made in the thoughts and ideals of people. The suggestibility or the power of reacting to a suggestion is not alike in all individuals, but even then, every individual is influenced by suggestion to some extent. In suggestion, some factors are of particular import. As a general rule, the suggestions or utterances of political leaders, actors, and religious saints are respected and imitated. People quote them in their own words. This power of suggestion is because of their prestige. Hence, this is called prestige suggestion. It is proverbially said that the path that the wide and the great tread is the path which ought to be taken. Similarly, the people are also want to imitate the majority. This is named suggestion of majority. People tend to adopt those activities that are considered good and are indulged in by the majority of individuals. This imitative tendency of human being is because of their socialization. The individual who remains unaffected by and indifferent to public opinion of the majority is a rare being indeed. In this way, all kinds of practices are propagated in public through the media of the opinions of respected individuals and the suggestions of the majority. For example, much of the propaganda indulged in by Indian National Congress is prefaced by the names of Pandit Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi. Propaganda, motives, and needs. Every activity of the human being is dependent upon his motives and his needs. Without this, the human individual cannot be instigated to indulge in any activity at all. That which is not needed and that which holds no inspirations or motivation cannot be the object of propaganda. Only that can be the object of propagation which is either needed by the public or the need for which is created. For this reason, people who are successful in propaganda appeal to the motives of the people, although the motives and the needs differ from individual to individual. Yet, in their general form, these motives and needs of most individuals conquer. To take an example, the desire to be respected in society and to be considered good is an almost universal desire. Almost every individual wants to obtain power. Every individual desires the security of his family and of his own self. And every individual wants to improve and raise his standard of living. Generally speaking, everyone has love for his country and his religion, if any. Everyone stands in perpetual need of food, clothing, occupation, name, and comfort. In propaganda, these needs and motives are aroused, and this awakening is exploited by those conducting the propaganda. The communal parties go around saying that their religion is in danger and by so doing rouse hatred for the opponents in their own people and thus instigate them. When the borders of a country are invaded by aggressor, the government organizes the people by talking of ensuring the security and safety of the nation. The communist-minded people propagate their ideals and those of their party in the poorer sections of the multitude by promising to eradicate poverty from their midst and by giving assurance of raising the living standards of the people. The life insurance agents appeal to the instinct for security of the family as well as the individual. Religious preachers propagate religious precepts in the name of God and religion. Today, everyone is aware of the fact that if there is to be propaganda for any object, then the need for it should be created in the people and it should be related to some or the other motive. Propaganda, belief, and attitudes. One aim of the propaganda is the control and transformation of the beliefs and attitudes of the people. As we have seen before, primary propaganda makes use of the existing attitudes, while in propaganda of secondary nature, the attitudes are transformed or created anew. In the same way, in propaganda, old beliefs are replaced by new ones, or at least an effort is made in this direction. For example, every political party tries to convince the public that it is the true and the only representative of the people, and it is the only one which can bring about the true welfare of the people. Everyone speaks of himself as the true representative of the people and wants to create distrust concerning his rivals in the minds of the electors. But in changing beliefs, it is essential to be aware of attitudes because otherwise propaganda cannot be effected forcefully. If the public is not at all tendentious in a particular direction, it is of no avail to start propagating in it without any preparation. Before this, the mind of the public should be prepared for it and a tendency towards it created. Propaganda in relation to feelings and emotions. The things that most easily influence the individual are those that arouse feelings and emotions. It is for this reason that while indulging in propaganda, the people who succeed are those who make progress in creating a favorable attitude towards themselves in the people. According to the need of the moment, they endeavor to excite fear, anger, hope, desire, and hatred, etc. in their audience. For example, the communal groups excite the emotions of fear, anger, and hatred in their own people with regard to other communities. In attempting to oust the British from the rule of India, different people aroused various emotions in the Indian people and instigated them against the Britishers and propagated the idea of independence of the country among the people. Mahatma Gandhi aroused the emotion of love of the country. The revolutionaries performed the task of spreading hatred and anger towards the British. All kinds of slogans were shouted. The objective of slogans is the excitement of the feelings and emotions of the public. Inqilab Zindabad is a slogan that aroused the fiend in men when it is bared or uttered. People express their anger by abusing the government in their slogans. The successful leaders control the feelings of the public and turn them into the desired channels through their inflammatory speeches. In development plans, the government tries to win active participation of the people in such movements and prohibition. Family planning, life insurance, corporation, etc. by the display of various kinds of posters and pictures. This, too, is one form of propaganda. In New York, USA, there is an Institute of Propaganda Analysis. This institute has classified the various methods of propaganda. According to it, the different methods are as following. Name calling. In propagating for somebody, whether in his favor or against him, some means are employed when referring to him. This name calling in itself is fairly good propaganda, favorable and unfavorable. It is not uncommon and may serve as a good illustration for individuals of one particular political party to refer to another party by speaking of them or calling them traitors. Some people employ propaganda against another party after giving them communal names. Transfer. In transfer, various unrelated facts, ideas, or objects are conjoined. For example, many preachers adduce many unrelated facts in favor of their own specific contention. Glittering personalities. There are some words which attract everyone and are acceptable to all. Some words of this kind are world brotherhood, equality, liberty, and fraternity, etc. Propaganda concerning many things is based upon these glittering common conceptions. In the field of international politics, both Russia and America indulge in the propagation of their own views, while ostensibly they speak of the word peace. The Communist Party uses the slogan of equality and fraternity to further and popularize its own principles. The slogan of the world peace and progress of humanity won recognition and consequent employment even by a dictator of the metal of Hitler. Testimonials. In trying to propagate their own products, thoughts, or views, people often solicit and make use of the testimonials of great leaders and renowned individuals. In India, most political parties resort to the age-old glitch that they are adopting the principles of Mahatma Gandhi and are putting them into practice, while all others are treading the wrong path. In the election days, the Congress turned to presenting the testimonials issued by Nehruji and Mahatma Gandhi. Plain folk appeal. In propaganda, regular appeal is made to the plain folk concept of the public because the people have a propensity for adopting the folk ways. Keeping this idea well focused in their minds, politicians all over the world adopt signs which bear a close relation to common life. For example, the election symbols of the various parties in India are a lamp for the Johnson, a cottage for the PSP, and the well-known hammer and the sickle of communists. All these implements and objects are very near to folk life. Bandwagon. The influence of the bandwagon is also utilized for the purpose of propaganda. People have a tendency to accept the majority opinion because majority opinion has the power of suggestions. Hence, every preacher tries to convince the public that it is his opinion that is accepted by the majority. This method is seen in extensive use at the election time. Even though they have received very few votes, the different political parties keep on announcing that they have received many votes and are leading by a wide margin. Card stacking. In this propaganda method, as is evident from its name, facts are twisted and molded in order to make them appear favorable to one's own view, while facts favoring the rival party by hook or crook are proved to be false. In this way, this is a one-sided propaganda. Evidently, this method of propaganda is immoral and misleading. Yet, it leads extensive use both in the national as well as the international field. In the national sphere, the government newspaper prints news favoring the government policies, while the newspapers published by the other political parties print news which are prejudicial to the government's policies, but in both cases the actual news gets transformed because of its modifications to the needs of the two rivals. The commonplace fact is brought into prominence, while the important fact is made to appear as if of secondary importance. And the opposition has a peculiar tendency of blaming one particular department for almost everything that happens to go wrong. Much the same sort of thing happens in the international field also. The Chinese newspapers are persisting in their propaganda against India and are continuing to say that it were the Indians who attacked their soldiers and the aggression was performed by the Indians who invaded their territory. Similarly, the Pakistan newspapers are also persistently stating that India is making military preparations that threaten the sovereignty and independence of Pakistan. Conclusion. Social psychology can do much towards rendering propaganda measures effective. Social psychologists conducted many experiments to discover the means whereby propaganda could be rendered more effective. In all these experiments, it has seen consistently that the effect of propaganda is dependent upon the strength of its psychological basis. Kimball Young has defined the following 4 factors as the psychological basis of propaganda. The object of propaganda as related to the audience. Every element on the basis of which propaganda is made more effective and concise. Specific suggestions related to the propaganda and other psychological methods. The effect of propaganda on ideas, viewpoints, values, and actions. It is necessary for the success of propaganda that the audience should be able to fathom the reason behind the propaganda. Direct propaganda is not as effective as indirect propaganda because in indirect propaganda, the people come to know the interest behind the propaganda and the individual whose interest it is. So, usually, it is indirect propaganda which is more effective. The fundamental point here is that behind every propaganda campaign, there is the interest of someone individual or group of individuals, and this is why it is not so much effective. If this is not so, in other words, if the objective of the preacher is selfless, then even direct propaganda can be useful. To take a common example, the Indian government is directly propagating such schemes as life insurance, family planning, and prohibition. It is the public which is going to benefit adopting these schemes. There is no interest of the government involved in them. Hence, we may conclude that even indirect propaganda is no less effective.